Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. When you ask a structural engineer, not a salesman, not a contractor trying to win your bid, not a YouTube channel with something to sell you, when you ask an actual structural engineer what they would build if they were starting from scratch today, a lot of them are landing on the same answer. The Dogtrot Barndominium. Not a McMansion, not a stick-built suburban box, not even the standard open-floor Barndominium that everybody was obsessed with 3 years ago. The Dogtrot. And when I started digging into why engineers specifically keep coming back to this design, what I found genuinely surprised me. Because it's not just about aesthetics. It's not about trends. It's about physics, airflow, load distribution, and long-term structural logic that most builders never even explain to their clients. So in this video, that's exactly what we're going to break down. Why the Dogtrot Barndominium isn't just beautiful, it's arguably the most intelligently designed residential structure you can build right now. And why the people who understand buildings at the deepest level keep pointing at it quietly, while the rest of the market is still catching up. Before we get into why engineers love it, let's make sure we're all looking at the same thing. A Dogtrot Barndominium is a home built around a central open breezeway, an outdoor passage that runs directly through the middle of the structure, connecting two separate living wings. Originally, this design came out of the American South in the 1800s. Settlers built it because they didn't have air conditioning. The open center channel pulled hot air through the home naturally, kept the living spaces cool, and created a shaded outdoor zone that was usable year-round. Now in 2026, that same design is being built with steel frames, spray foam insulation, standing seam metal roofs, and high-end interior finishes. And it still works for every reason it worked 200 years ago, plus several new ones. The two wings give you natural separation of space. Typically, one side handles the main living areas, kitchen, dining, great room, and the other handles the private spaces, bedrooms, bathrooms, home office. The breezeway in between becomes one of the mostest spaces in the entire home. People put outdoor kitchens there, fireplaces, dining areas, sitting spaces, and it becomes the heart of how the family actually lives. That's the design. Now let's talk about why engineers specifically are drawn to it. The number one thing structural engineers think about, before aesthetics, before cost, before anything, is load path. How does weight travel from the roof, down through the walls, into the foundation, and into the ground? The cleaner and more direct that path, the stronger and more efficient the structure. Here's where the Dogtrot has a real advantage. Because the home is built as two separate wings rather than one massive single-span structure, each wing carries its own load independently. You don't need the enormous ridge beams, the complex interior post systems, or the deep foundation work that a wide, open-span Barndominium requires. Each section is structurally simpler, and simpler structures perform better over time, especially under wind load, seismic movement, and the natural settling that every home does over decades. Engineers will also tell you that the open breezeway isn't a weakness in the design. It's actually a pressure relief. In high wind conditions, especially in storm-prone areas, a solid wall structure catches wind like a sail. The Dogtrot's open center allows wind to pass through rather than fight against the walls. That's not an accident, that's geometry working in your favor. And then there's the roof. The Dogtrot's natural roof line, two separate pitched sections over each wing, handles rain drainage and snow load distribution in a way that single-span designs genuinely struggle with. Water follows the path of least resistance. And the Dogtrot gives it multiple clear paths off the structure. None of this is theoretical. This is why the design survived for 2 centuries before steel frames and spray foam even existed. It was structurally sound enough to last without modern materials. Add modern materials to it, and you get something that is extraordinarily durable. Here's where it gets even more interesting, because this is the part that surprises most people. The Dogtrot Barndominium is one of the most naturally energy-efficient residential designs available. Not because of the materials you put in it, but because of how the geometry itself manages temperature. That central breezeway creates what's called a thermal buffer. During warm months, the open channel pulls hot air away from both wings through natural convection. You get cross-ventilation without mechanical systems doing any of the work. In climates where you have mild springs and falls, many Dogtrot owners run their HVAC systems significantly less than comparable homes of the same square footage, because the passive design is already handling a portion of the thermal load. In colder months, the breezeway acts as a windbreak between the two wings. Each wing retains heat more efficiently because it's a smaller, contained volume rather than one large open space that needs to be heated end to end. The result is a home that works with its environment rather than against it. And for builders who are watching their monthly utility costs over a 20 or 30-year horizon, that matters enormously. The best energy-saving feature isn't always a piece of technology you can buy. That sometimes it's a design decision you make before the first stake goes in the ground. Structural engineers don't just think about how buildings stand up. The best ones think about how buildings are actually lived in. And the Dogtrot design solves something that almost no other floor plan handles as well: multi-generational living. This is the conversation that keeps coming up. Families with aging parents, families with adult children who need their own space, families who want guest quarters that feel genuinely separate without building a detached structure on the property. The two-wing layout handles all of it naturally. You put the main family on one side, the in-law suite or guest wing on the other. The breezeway in between is shared space, a connection point that is open and communal without being intrusive. Both sides have full privacy. Neither side feels like they're living in someone else's home. And the whole structure reads as one cohesive, designed property from the outside. That's not a layout you can easily replicate in a traditional floor plan without spending significantly more money on square footage or a separate structure. The Dogtrot gives it to you as a byproduct of its fundamental geometry. And then there's the outdoor living component. The breezeway isn't just airflow, it's usable square footage that costs a fraction of enclosed square footage to build. A covered, shaded, wind-managed outdoor space between two wings of your home becomes a dining room, a social space, a morning coffee spot, an evening gathering area. Families who build Dogtrot Barndominiums consistently say the breezeway becomes the most used space in the entire home. Not the living room, not the kitchen, the breezeway. That's a design that understands how people actually live, not just how buildings technically function. Let's talk money, because this is where people always have questions. The Dogtrot is not the cheapest Barndominium design to build per square foot. The two separate foundations, the breezeway structure and the two roof lines, add cost compared to a simple single-span rectangle. That's honest and worth saying clearly. But here's what the cost conversation misses when it stops there. The Dogtrot's structural simplicity in each individual wing means you're not paying for complex engineering solutions to span a massive open interior. The savings on interior structural steel and foundation depth in each wing offset a meaningful portion of the breezeway addition. The long-term energy savings compound over years of lower utility bills. And the functional square footage you get from the breezeway, which costs roughly a third of what enclosed square footage costs, means your effective cost per usable space is significantly better than the raw numbers suggest. When engineers and experienced builders run the full 20-year cost model, build cost, maintenance, energy, resale value, the Dogtrot holds up exceptionally well. It's not the cheapest option on day one. It's the smartest option over time. And that's exactly the kind of thinking that separates people who build once and love it from people who build once and wish they'd done it differently. The Dogtrot Barndominium has been around for over 200 years. It wasn't designed by an architect trying to win an award. It was designed by people who needed their home to actually work. In heat, in wind, in rain, with family, with limited resources, over decades. The fact that structural engineers keep quietly coming back to it in 2026 isn't a coincidence. It's confirmation that the original logic was sound, and that when you combine that logic with modern materials and modern construction methods, you get something that is genuinely difficult to beat. If this kind of content helps you think through your build more clearly, if it gives you information you're not getting from contractors or salespeople, then subscribe. We put out videos like this regularly, and every one of them is built around the same idea: give you the real information so you can make the right decision. We'll see you in the next one.